Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to do a fast and loose impressionist landscape painting in watercolor. I am using 11 by 14 or 11 by 15 quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua, 100% cotton. It is 140 pound cold press. I just saturated it with water, use the binder clips to stretch it out, and I'll get started. So this is going to be a somewhat imaginary scene, or maybe a scene that I've seen in the past, and I want to make it up as I go along. I'm not working from a photograph. I'll try to superimpose the result right here if you would like to follow along. You are always more than welcome to follow along with anything that I paint, and you are more than welcome to signing your own name to it. And if somebody says, hey, I would love to buy that painting from you, you are more than welcome to sell anything you do whenever you follow one of my tutorials. I want you guys to be successful. I want you guys to be confident, and having money for art supplies is always helpful. So I'm feeding ultramarine blue in. I'm creating my background sky. And as I use different colors, I will let you know. Let's grab some raw sienna. Now, I didn't wash the brush, so it's going to be a little bit muddy. Ultramarine and raw sienna will get kind of a gray. I'm going to work my way down to a horizon line. I like to paint to the edges, just in case it gets matted. It also helps prevent the whites on the side from throwing you off. Let's grab a little bit of alizarin crimson, feed that into the sky. Through. And now I'm going to map out my land. So I grab some more raw sienna. I'm really not washing my brush off at all between these. Far distant, I'm thinking that I'm going to have a group of trees come up in this location. And I'm guessing we'll kind of almost do like a two-point perspective, where I'll have my foreground come closer. My group of trees will come up here and recede back and recede back. So this will be loosely based on across the street from my friends Bill and Nicole's house. There is a tree line where there's farmland on one side. I'm not sure if they do sugar cane on that farm. Then the other farm has some crawfish ponds, rice fields, and a lot of land for cattle. And that guy who owns this one, he flies, I think he flies the planes for the pokey plant down south of from where I am. They have a huge operation, a fishing operation, where they have the boats and the nets and all that to catch the fish. I'm not sure if it's like the Omega Corporation or what, but I know some people that work out there, and they say that they have a lot of safety protocols for dolphins and sea turtles and all that. So, you know, it's like, you know, a safe for the environment type company. Anywho, back to this. Let's grab some burnt sienna now for my extreme foreground. Grab some burnt umber. Kind of do a little directional where that 2-point perspective will start taking place, where it's going to lead back to that point and to that point. So it kind of creates a dynamic corner right here. There's some more burnt umber. Notice how I set it a little bit offset from the center so that it's not right then and there. Okay, switching my colors up a little bit, light red oxide and ultramarine. I'm thinking I'll leave the palette in the video for this one. I don't think I'm going to crop it out so that you guys can see what I'm mixing. This is for the far distant skyline, tree line that we're receding back to. I'm going to bring just that higher concentration coming forward. We'll have our light coming from the left to cast a shadow. We'll put our darks on this side. Okay, a little bit more ultramarine into the mix, a bit of variation back here. Slowly trying to create this wall of trees and have it grow closer to us. Start putting in the foliage for the closer trees. Foliage for that recession. So we're all still really wet and wet. Just mapping out, having fun. Let's see. I think we'll benefit from switching over to the #1 rigger. Mixing a little bit of Payne's Gray into this mix, or a lot of it. And I'll use this wet and wet to create part of those tree trunks. Now as it comes closer, you'll see that I'm making them larger in the picture plane. I just filmed a video with the perspective explaining why that happens. So feel free to also check that out on my YouTube page. I've been putting a lot of stuff up, so if there's ever anything you want to see or any topics that maybe I didn't clarify or something you'd like me to revisit, let me know. Because I really just enjoy filming, to be honest. Sometimes I'll want to kind of listen to music while I paint, but a lot of the times the talking doesn't distract me, which I know a lot of people will either just do a time lapse or dub over, you know, after the fact. But I guess being a school teacher, you learn how to kind of multitask, where you could be teaching about fractions, but at the same time watching a student in the class to make sure they are behaving. Another thing I wanted to mention about this, so here I have that point that I'm going to be looking at, kind of radiating a few lines towards to kind of create that 2-point perspective. And that wet and wet will help diffuse it and make it softer. It should be radiating this way, sorry. Though I did lose my train of thought. Just a little bit here, a little soft. I heard that meow, hopefully the cats are okay. And I up was to check on them. can grab some raw sienna, since we're still wet and wet, put in some softer foliage. Oh, I just got sad. I'm sorry. This field, without going into too much detail, unfortunately, one of my coworkers suffered a stroke over the summer. He's still alive and all that. But whenever I had met this farmer and he found out that I taught at school, he said, "Oh, so-and-so was by earlier today," which was a coworker. So for some reason, the field always makes me think of him. I hear he's doing better. And it's always something, unfortunately. So anyway, bring it back into the positive. I took some lemon yellow and splattered that in there, and that helped start creating the greens, because we want to get cheerful with this one. And catch a little bit of shadows in here, but as you can see, we're going to be darker on the left side, and we'll have the light coming from here. In fact, we might even do a little bit of lifting while it's still a little damp to lighten this sky up a little bit. We could even bring out highlights and texture on that side. So, I'm still wet and wet, pushing color around, pushing pigment around. Create a little bit of foreground. We can take the credit card, which, good news, one of my cards, well, my only card, my credit card, well, bad news, but the chip has stopped working. So that means I have to do a new card. However, that means we have a new card to cut up to use for painting. I'm using the rounded edge of the card. This is an old one that I cut up 3 years ago to start scraping out trees and highlights and shapes. We can even do a little bit of like fence post aspects. Let's do that kind of extreme fence post. Hopefully it doesn't stop the eye from entering the picture. We'll play around with it. If it does, we'll leave kind of maybe an opening right here for eyes to come in and walk through. Ways to look about. We still haven't done a dry off. Let's see. Let's go back with some Payne's Gray into that green that was mixed on the palette. The other trees that we had put in softened up or got painted over. So we start creating an illusion of depth just from that alone by having our stronger paints over the weaker ones. Some burnt umber. Kind of give it a little bit of color as it catches more light on this side. From left to right, they're going to get a little tighter as they recede back. We could start giving a little roundness, a little bit of shape to those fields. Whenever I say I don't know something in a video, like right off the bat, you know how with fields they'll dig out that little area between the rows, a little trench. I don't know if there's a particular name for that, But now that I said that, shout out to my mom. Whenever she watches this, she will message me a screenshot of what they're called, if there's any other particular name for it. So thank you in advance for that, Mom. I took Payne's Gray onto the shadow side. Put a little bit of raw sienna in here. These guys are going to have shadows too. I didn't even think about that. So the light's coming from this way. We'll kind of use that concept of how we tried to have all lines radiate to those 2 points. When we have it coming from a point like a light source, we'll radiate out from that. And it'll come more this way. So just, you don't have to sit there with a ruler or anything like that. You can just draw your lines in these fashions, and that'll help out. Ground them in place a little bit. And we can flick a little bit of grass whispers around that. I'm thinking we might do trying to think of what type of fence we would want between this. If it was wooden, it would look quite derelict because of how random I made it, just having fun with it. But if we do a barbed wire fence, I don't know if that would feel welcoming. I think that's what I originally had in mind. I think that's what I'll wind up doing. A few weeks ago, I helped my friend who lives on the other side of the road, so you'd be at his house seeing this view, put in a fence. What type of fence did he call it? He said there's different types of fences, like a field fence, a cattle fence. We'll just say it's a field cattle fence, and if I'm describing something different and you know fences, let me know in the comments below. So we were doing the finishing touches on this huge fence around his property, and I'm going to grab some lemon yellow. I think you'll like this story. I don't know if I've told it on here before. So we were putting in the finishing touches on the fence. There was like some cattle guard type stuff, fence we were putting up, and other things. And rather than using a fence puller, which is like a board you'd put on either side of the fence, clamp it, attach it to what we call a come along, where you pull the lever and it ratchets it and pulls it. Rather than doing that, I would grab part of the fence with pliers. This is a alizarin crimson in here. With pliers, and I'd put it on a pivot point and leverage it to pull it tight on each one. And he would put in the two-prong nail that he was nailing in. And we were going around the property adding that in certain spots that the finishing touches needed to be done. And we're on the last one, and his stepson, Nicholas, was there kind of watching, helping like pass tools and stuff. And one of the tools I passed through to him to get, I was like, okay, you can put these away. And that spot where I passed it to him, I climbed through it, and he, Bill climbed through it, and we realized that we had left this huge gap in the fence that we were just passing things through, that we were just walking through while attaching the fence, thinking that we're done right on the other side of that post. And we're like, what were we thinking? It was pretty funny. Maybe not the best storyteller here today, but it was pretty hilarious when you're in the heat working on that fence, and then just walking through one side. And I think he's gonna have sheep and goat. And just like laughing, just thinking like, if we'd have left that spot there, how would the sheep and goat look at that spot and be like, this has to be some sort of trap, like nobody be that dumb to leave that open for us. I'm going to put some kind of extreme darks on either side to use what's called counter change. So it's kind of lighter right here for that post, and then around it it's dark to help it stand out. Same thing here. The paper is in the drying process right now, so areas like this I'm re-adding water in, but we shouldn't have too much of a drying shift that takes place. See, we'll paint in the wiring for the fence, and then we'll decide what needs to be done from there. So I'm going to do kind of a scraggly wire. I'm going to let it skip and jump. Maybe do like 2 hoops around where it might wrap. Little dots to kind of give the illusion of the barbed wire. You can see how it's wet right there still. And rather than painting in the wiring, we could scrape the wiring out right here. We'll leave this spot open. I'm going to pause the camera for a moment for a dry off. Alright, so I did a quick dry off with the blow dryer, and I was looking at it through the camera lens. I'm thinking that, first of all, I'll take a little bit of Payne's Gray and put in parallel lines back here. The reason I thought of that was that it would mimic and reflect the foreground fence. So we'd have that big element here and that small element back that created horizontally while it's being broken vertically by this. So that was what my mind was thinking. I then thought about how we do need to add some more branch elements, and we'll probably stipple some more color in. This is just a light mix, kind of a gray with the ultramarine. And then we'll get strong with our dark burnt sienna, ultramarine. As we get closer, so I want this dark to really stand on top. We have some burnt umber. And if you're following along with this, you can just play with this as long as you want. Bring our darks works out. We could take that dark, put a little bit of grass that would grow around the posts. So, you know, I always thought like that little bit of grass around posts was caused by maybe somebody that's mowing or something like that. They wouldn't want to weed eat around it. But I wonder if there's another reason why grass might clump up around that. So that's something to think about. Besides that dark. I like how that one's a little washed out because of the light. Now on the other side, let's grab some raw sienna. A little too unnatural, but I think it'll read interestingly. Probably accompany it with some burnt umber. Let's see if we can get out some nice bright lemon yellow. I'd put some fresh lemon yellow out at the beginning. Every time I put it out, it gets used up immediately. I don't use it all the time, but whenever I do use it, it's the Van Gogh brand. The Van Gogh brand, just a cheap one. Now this bright yellow, I want to make sure it doesn't recede too far back, because I want it to help push the spot closer. And I can grab a little bit of Payne's gray to help it out. And then as we shift to the other side, I'm going to cheat and grab some sap green. I don't like to use sap green throughout the painting. In the final stages, I feel like it helps if I use it. We really didn't focus too much on the grass on the bottom, so let's look a bit here and here. This is the sap green being pushed throughout. The lemon yellow. I can allow that lemon yellow to be in that foreground as well. We do have this yellowish plant, flower, weed, whatever you would want to call it, that grows in the ditches along fence lines. I'm just not on the up and up with the names. All right. Burnt umber, burnt sienna. I'm just thinking about the densities in here. We might do one more trunk or two. Burnt umber, Payne's gray. This will be the trunk to end all trunks. Harrison, you got the sniffles? You might have heard one of our cats, Harrison, sneezing. Let's see. that sap green to help it sit. Okay, we'll do a dry off. We'll put a mat over it and sign it and see how it looks. All right, we just did the dry off. I use the Micron pens usually for signing. I do have some fountain pens that have some good permanent ink in them, but let's do that. We could have used the Micron pens to draw in part of the fence and branches and stuff. So if you want to play around with that, kind of a mixed media, it is quite fun. Let's pull this out so we can see. And there we go. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, follow. I'll talk to y'all soon. And have a great day.